Are you looking to get on the road to your dream career? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Mentor Select Podcast with your host, Derek Phillips. Always stay up to date on social media at Mentor Select and online at mentorselect.com. Here's your host of the Mentor Select Podcast, Derek Phillips.
Welcome to episode 67 of the Mentor Select Podcast. I am so thrilled that you joined us this week. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share the Mentor Select Podcast on your favorite platform, whether that's Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, you name it, we're there. So help us get the word out that Mentor Select Podcast is sharing invaluable virtual mentorship provided by our guest mentors every week, and help us grow the channel. I had an adventurous morning today. I actually had outpatient surgery on my finger. And initially, when I did the consultation with my surgeon, he said it would just be maybe just numb in my finger. But as I was laying there on the bed, they put the IV in. The anesthesiologist said, "Hey, we're going to put you to sleep." Surprise. So at that point, it was no turning back. It's too late to get scared. So all I could do is pray that I woke up and everything went well. So being that I'm talking to you right now, telling you the story, clearly it went well. I woke up, no complications, and I'm just in minor pain. I'm very thankful for that. My loving wife, Raquel, has been my on-call nurse all day. She took the day off of work, and I can't be more thankful for her. And now Legacy's home, so she's brightening up my day, made me forget all about my finger pain. So very excited about that. Today is an awesome interview with Bracy. He has risen to the highest levels in marketing in corporate America. He has worked as VP of marketing for large Fortune 500 companies like Procter and Gamble. So yeah, I don't know, that's a big deal. So really excited for him to share his marketing experience with us. Also, he's a University of Michigan graduate, both undergraduate and his Master of Business Administration from the University of Michigan. And if that wasn't impressive enough, he's heavily involved in the Prison Entrepreneurship Program, currently serving as a Director of Education for their eSchool. He has some really cool stories to share from those experiences and extensive mentorship that he does with his church. So today we have Bracy on the Mentor Select Podcast. How are you, Carl?
Hey, I'm doing well.
I'm happy to have you. Glad you can join us this cold afternoon in Dallas.
Yes, very cold.
Yes, this is our version of winter now in the 50s.
That's right.
Even though being from Indiana, I think I should be used to a little colder.
Yeah, that's true. I'm from Detroit, so I'm used to the cold.
Oh, so you know about winters and blizzards and all that yucky stuff. Cool. Well, Carl, like I said, I'm glad you can join us on the Mentor Select Podcast. And just as the Mentor Select listeners, you serving in the role as a guest mentor for this interview, we'd like to get to know our guest mentors better. So do you mind sharing something with us that most people don't know about you?
There's probably a lot of things people don't know about me, but I'd say, okay, there's something called a Bacon number. This is, if you Google this, the Bacon number is how many steps away from Kevin Bacon are you? Because Kevin Bacon has been pretty much, and I have a Bacon number of 2, and that means that I've acted with somebody who acted with Kevin Bacon, and so I've actually been in a skit with William Shatner, Kirk on Star Trek.
Wow.
So he just flew in, and he didn't even have to rehearse. He just stood up there, and I had all my lines rehearsed. But anyway, yeah, I was at a big meeting where I got to act with him. That was fun. And he has a Kevin Bacon number of 1 because he acted in a movie with Kevin Bacon.
With Kevin Bacon. I never heard of it, a Bacon number. Okay.
Barack Obama has a 2 as well.
Okay.
So he acted with somebody who acted with Kevin Bacon.
I'm probably like a 10, but
so it doesn't have to be formal acting. But anyway, that is something clearly nobody would know
about. All right, cool. So, Carl, on the Mentor Select Podcast, we encourage our listeners to follow their passions because we believe it ultimately will lead them to their dream career. Can you tell us how you're following your passions? Or
wow, we'll probably get into a little bit of kind of my background, but my life plan had always been to leave corporate America a little early.
Okay.
I think a lot of people wait to retire and then maybe even hang around even after that for a while. But I really felt like, 30 years of career was good. I was good to go. And I wanted to go off and do something that I felt more passionate about.
Okay.
And the area of restorative justice is something I feel very strongly about. And I had taught in the prison system when I was at the University of Michigan. Taught algebra to guys getting their GED. So I felt that I wanted to get back into that role after 30 years of marketing. And so I'm following my passion and working with a program called Prison Entrepreneur Program. And I'm a non-paid volunteer, but I end up as right now currently director of education for the program.
Wow. We're certainly going to dive deep into that, but let's backtrack a little bit. Yeah. So in corporate America, what did you do?
So I started off a classic career in marketing. I started up with Procter and Gamble and marketed, exciting products that for your listeners, probably not too much. I was very excited about them, but Joy dishwashing liquid.
Okay.
I was the Downy fabric softener assistant product manager. I was the brand manager for Ivory. I was the director of marketing for hard surface cleaners, Spick and Span, Mr. Clean. I launched the Swiffer mop.
Wow.
And that was 11 years of marketing at P&G. And then we moved here to Dallas, where my wife is from. And I had a 7-year career as senior vice president of marketing in telecommunications and energy, deregulating markets. And then the last 13 years, I've been the chief marketing officer for Essilor Luxottica, which is a French-based multinational company in vision care. So we own the lens crafters, Pearl Visions, lenses like transitions that change from light to dark. And a lot of what you buy in vision is what we market. And I was the chief marketing officer there. So I headed up all of marketing and sat on the executive committee for the company as well.
Wow.
So
all right.
That was my corporate career.
That's very cool. And a lot of those projects that you worked on at Procter and Gamble, the listeners probably have many of them in our homes today. I know I do.
I was a lot of fun at house parties because I could talk to everybody about dishwashing liquid, and and people would actually kind of geek out on dishwashing liquid, basically. So it was fun talking about products that people know.
Knew the ins and outs, huh?
That's right.
Cool. So how does someone get involved in marketing? What led you into that field?
I'll tell you a little bit about my journey. So, and it was, I kind of wandered a little bit in college. Well, first of all, step back in high school. I was not the most outstanding student in high school.
Okay.
I was a late bloomer for sure.
I can relate to that.
My senior year, I really kind of decided, well, it might be good to try to get good grades. And so my senior year in high school, really, really, got into it. But ended up going to a small school in Tennessee for the first 2 years playing soccer, and got excited about psychology. So we started taking, my psychology classes, and I really thought I might want to be a psychologist. I transferred to the University of Michigan my junior year.
Okay.
At this time, now I was picking up and I was becoming more academic and my grades were good. And graduated from University of Michigan with a degree in organizational behavior, which is kind of the business end of psychology. So still kind of, moving from classic research psychology or even therapeutic psychology to business psychology. So I thought I'd have a career in human resources.
Okay.
Went on to get my master's in business administration right away. That was also from the University of Michigan. And did my first internship at Sara Lee Corporation between my first and second year in HR and human resources. And at the end of the HR internship, really good boss said, "Hey, great internship. Love to have you back, but we think you'd be better in marketing than human resources."
Oh,
I guess based on my personality and what they thought interests me. So I did not end up going to Sara Lee. I ended up, interviewing with a number of really classic marketing companies. And at that time, Procter & Gamble, this would have been 1986. Procter & Gamble was really the very best place to go if you want marketing training.
Okay.
At that time. I think today, maybe more the tech world is probably every bit as good. But at that time, Procter & Gamble was really what you wanted to have. And I had several job offers, but when P&G made me the job offer, they closed me on the deal. So that started my marketing career. So I guess maybe the lesson here is, you can feel free to wander a little bit around your interests, because I think your
Right.
interests always change throughout your whole life.
Yeah. I
And
think that's,
yeah, so I ended up not doing an HR job. Now, as the years went on, and of course, as I started to run big organizations, amazingly enough, as an executive, you end up doing a human resource job. Ultimately,
no way around it.
That's right. So ultimately, I was not doing the marketing on the individual products by the time I was 30 years in my career. I was actually managing the careers of other up and coming young people who were in marketing. And so you're a little bit like somebody who's running a professional sports team. You're trying to get the best players into the best locations that they can do their very best.
Talent management.
Yeah, so essentially, I got to do that HR job. It just came after 25 years.
Okay, cool. But I found it interesting. You say you're a late bloomer. That's something I can relate to. Probably for the first 3 years of high school, it's kind of a little bit above average. But my senior year, I ended up getting all A's. That's when I was really starting taking school serious.
Exactly like me. And I think the message here is it is never too late to reinvent yourself.
Right. So totally agree. But wow, University of Michigan, that's a big time school. So what was it like going there?
It wasn't, having grown up in Detroit, it was a particularly competitive school for Michigan kids. The year that I graduated from high school, they turned down our valedictorian. So would have had no chance of getting from high school. But once again, I think the lesson here, I went on to a small school that I could get more individual attention, turn my grades around, learn how to study in college, and then I was ready my junior year to go to Michigan. So I never left that dream. I just had to, you only fail when you quit trying.
Right.
So I just kept my focus on that, and ultimately I turned it around enough to get to where I wanted to be. Yeah,
that's a good strategy, and just reinforces that it's never too late. And like you have that dream school, maybe you're not ready right out of high school, but go prove yourself at a smaller school, then transfer, and it'll save you some money, most likely.
Oh yes, of course. Oops, that's probably somebody wanted
to. No problem.
Sorry about that.
Now, so what was the experience though in the University of Michigan? And we all see it on TV with it's a big football school and then basketball. What was just that experience of being a student there?
Once again, you've got to understand, I grew up in Michigan. So for me, it was just, wow, this is like the pinnacle of schools in Michigan to go to. I did look at some other ones as well that were out of state, Northwestern and some others, but Michigan, because of probably the sports, I'd always been a fan. And so to show up on campus there was just amazing. And it was so big, and it's a campus mixed in with the school. And so, it was very, very exciting. I remember getting my map and practicing where all my classes were, because we had very little time to get from one class to the other. And the students all looked so smart. And of course they're, at any big university, there's always a lot of wealthy students. My family was not. And so, it took a while for me to say, do I belong here?
Okay.
And so I went through that process kind of the first year, but I kind of I said, you know what, I'm going to act like I belong. and you can kind of fake it till you make it.
Right.
And I really kind of felt like I went through my first year kind of faking it till I made it. I joined a fraternity. And ended up being president of the fraternity. So, over time, you just keep focused on kind of what your goals are. So it was a lot of fun. Going to the games was great. I was one of the team managers for the girls basketball team. So, it was fun to be right on courtside with the women as they were playing. And so, there were just a lot of really great opportunities. And, once again, I just studied really, really hard and kept track of my studies, like as if I was putting in hours in a meeting. I would keep track of how many hours I would spend studying on certain topics. And
oh, wow.
So,
very disciplined.
Once again, I think it was a little bit of, I felt like I had something to prove, because I hadn't I was first generation college at that time. So I had something to kind of prove that I could do it.
Okay. Now, what fraternity are you a member of?
Well, it's called Pi Kappa Phi.
Okay.
So we were, just for interest's sake, if you look in the history books, we were Trigon, which was the last independent fraternity in the Big Ten.
Okay.
And as president, or called Archon, actually, at Pi Kappa Phi, I led the alignment of this last independent fraternity in the Big Ten into Trigon. So I was the first initiate after 75 years at the University of Michigan when the chapter closed to Pi Kappa Phi, and they rechartered it when my whole group and my house all joined Pi Kappa Phi. So, and it was good. It gave me something to talk about in job interviews for sure. So,
absolutely. So for, I guess some of the listeners who are considering joining a fraternity, sorority, what would you say are some of the benefits?
Well, benefits, of course, are networking and brotherhood. You get to hear from your brothers. They care about you. They help you get acclimated to the university. There's a lot of inside things that they've got so that they can help with. So it makes a big university smaller.
Okay.
There are lots of ways to do that. Fraternities are only one. But in the 80s, really, the fraternities were the primary way. Today, I think we have lots more groups and a lot more places that you can feel community. So it makes a big fraternity small, gives you leadership opportunities, I think. I think the other side of the question is it can be a very big distraction from studying. So you need to manage that, and you need to have strength to say no to things. If you feel like I've got to do absolutely everything that the upperclassmen want me to do, then it can be a problem. So I'd say first, make sure you've got this scholastic part of the university down well,
right,
before you do something extracurricular like this.
Okay.
If you don't have that, please don't flunk out because
right. No, that's really good advice, and I'm sure that's something that that's often overlooked until it's too late.
Until it's too late, and so put first things first for sure.
Definitely. All right. So you mentioned being first generation college student. What city did you grow up in, Michigan?
I grew up in this little town called Lapeer, which is north of Detroit. It's kind of between north of Detroit, east of Flint.
Okay.
Just on the outer skirts of kind of Metro Detroit, Metro Flint.
Right.
It was a nice little town to grow up in. I'd say blue collar for the most part. Most of the people were kind of working in the plants. And I was first generation in college. My dad was a minister, so he had a couple of years of Bible school.
Okay.
So he had some advanced training out of high school. So I had a concept of what that might be like, but he does not have a degree. Never finished his degree. Didn't really need to. The same time I was at Michigan, my mom decided to go back to school herself, and she ended up graduating from the U of M Flint.
Wow.
So I had my mother in school at the U of M Flint while I was in the U of M Ann Arbor. And that actually good because she was a woman in her 40s at the time, and she was just an outstanding student, of course.
Right.
But as 40-year-olds go back to school off the mark.
Yeah, a lot more disciplined.
Exactly. She disciplined. She created a little bit of competition for me, and I think that pushed me as well.
That's cool, man. In college at the same time as your mom, you inspired her to go back, and she's pushing you to get better grades. I love that.
Exactly. And she was, of course, straight A student from the start. She didn't have a sorority to be part of. So
another thing you touched on, I think is important for kids getting ready to go to college or currently in college, is terms of not feeling like you belong, like you don't fit in.
Yes.
Can you go a little deeper in terms of, I know you're saying like basically like fake it till you make it, but what are some challenges that comes along with that? You're going to this big university, all these, maybe around a lot of rich kids, but that probably was the number one challenge. Today I feel much more confident about who I am, but at the time, of course, you're 18, 20 years old and you still don't know who you are. A lot of kids at the University of Michigan are from the East Coast. It's a heavy New York school, and just unbelievable amount of money that I just simply didn't know existed. I didn't grow up in a rich town. Different world.
It was different. I mean, we were not, we're not impoverished by any means, but we just did not have disposable income like these people did. And they dressed great, and they had the latest of everything kind of clothes, and they took crazy trips on the weekends, and they did things like skiing, and that was tough. And I didn't feel that I needed to go pick up all that, but I probably spent too much money with my summer job on clothes because I didn't want to look like a kid who, came from a lower middle class family. So because of that, that was a little tough at first. And then I think as I got into this, and of course, as I became a president of my fraternity, I was certainly less embarrassed to talk about my background because they liked me for who I was. And I realized that then, that it wasn't because I, was some kind of person that fit the mold.
All right.
I think the schools, this was the 80s, so I keep pointing that out. I think schools now are much more appreciative of diversity, and they look for people who are different from you, and they find that cool.
Right.
And whereas in the 80s, I don't think that was, at that time, that wasn't considered that cool. So to be different was more isolating. Today, I'm glad to see that, kids I talk to, being who they are and expressing who they are is just far more accepted, and it's better. But at the time for me, I did feel a pressure to kind of conform. And and that was something I went through the first year until I finally said, this is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and I agree. I think has shifted more towards being an individual. Of course, kids still have to deal with peer pressure and just feeling they're not belonging. But I think it is more acceptable to be diverse and different than previous generations. So I think it's a good thing. It's certainly one.
Probably had I had a little bit more, more appreciation of differences, I probably wouldn't have spent quite so much in college, which ended up meaning that I left with some pretty significant loans at the time. Mm-hmm. Now, the good news is that I really focused on paying the high interest student loans off right away when I got out. I had a good job. I was blessed in that way. Okay. So I was able to put the money towards paying off those high interest loans, but I really focused before letting my lifestyle kind of catch up with my income. I paid off student loans, and that was one of the very fortunate things that I did. I had loans that had 15-16% interest.
Ouch.
So those can rack up really, really big, and I just simply was out of money, and I remember borrowing from whoever I could to pay my last bill of school so I could get my degree.
Ouch. Okay.
I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably have had or could have experiences like that. But if I had been a little bit more budgeting while I was in college, probably I wouldn't have had that as much of a problem. But didn't have as much discipline as I do now.
Now you mentioned you may have not spent as long in college. Would you probably still went straight ahead and got your MBA, or you may have would have waited? How do you think you would have done it differently?
It's a really good question. At the time being, there were very few schools that would accept you coming straight out of school. At my school, I had a choice to kind of wait 2 years and go to Harvard. I was accepted academically there.
Wow. Or
wait 1 year and go to Northwestern, or go straight to the University of Michigan. Michigan at that time accepted 5% or so without work experience. I was one of those 5% because I had good leadership as an undergrad.
Okay.
I decided to go straight on because I kind of wanted to get going with my life. That was a decision I made. It probably was good for me from a career standpoint.
Right.
But I'll be honest, is that what I got out of my MBA probably wasn't as valuable as that 28 or 29-year-old who had 4 years or 5 years of work experience. They could provide more in class than I could. Talking about my fraternity leadership only goes so far. When they're talking about their 3 or 4 year, professional career that they had at a company, they had way more they could contribute.
Okay.
So even schools like Michigan, I think today don't actually accept any without 2 years of work experience. I think it's very hard to get into the best program without some work experience now. Mm-hmm. I don't think it happens for the most part, and I think there's a good reason for that. But for me, it worked. But it's not the same choice that kids will have today.
Good insight. Now, for listeners that may be considering a career in marketing, what does that entail?
So let me first define marketing for just a second. Is that there are really two kinds of marketing careers that I think people get mixed up on, but there are really two. One is kind of what you might classically more think about marketing, which is, either you're doing a lot of directing of agencies who are developing web designs or TV commercials, or those kinds of communication-y marketing people. And then there's marketing people like at Procter and Gamble who are really mini general managers in training. So they're working a lot more on strategy. Yes, they do direct the creative development of the marketing campaigns and other things, but for the most part, they're really working on all the P's that involve with marketing a product and making your brand successful. You're the one who's responsible for whether that product grows, shrinks, or stays flat.
Okay.
I took the second route because ultimately I wanted to have the option of being a general manager. So, but I think that has a lot to do with whether you view your talents as more creative or do you view your talents as more analytical. And I thought mine would be more analytical, and that was a good choice for me. It's a much more analytical job when it's the little mini general manager in training versus the creative marketing guy, which is a little bit more on the creative side.
Okay.
So I decided on the second, and that was a good one for me. And so even though I was chief marketing officer at Essilor, I was also president of a couple divisions. Because I had the general management skills, I could also be at the corporate level with the top 15 guys running the company. And I was a member of that, and I could talk corporate strategy. I didn't have to talk the functions only of marketing. I could talk everything else. I think if you do the creative side, a lot of times your career would probably, top out maybe more at the VP level or the director level. It's a great career. If it's what you're good at, you should do. But
right.
I purposely chose a second.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Exciting marketing. Yeah, my wife, she's a marketing manager.
Is she?
So I get to hear her stories.
Yes.
So,
I found it to be real exciting if you understand and like people, if you like numbers, if you can fall in love with your product, which pretty much I can fall in love with every product. If you're competitive, takes a little bit of being competitive, marketing is a great career to get into.
All right. Now, you mentioned earlier about what you're currently doing. Tell us more about your role with PEP.
Yeah, so there were really two general kind of directions that I thought once I left Essilor that I was thinking of. One was immigrant issues, which I felt some heart for as well, and then restorative justice. I talked to organizations on both ends of it and really felt like restorative justice and this one particular Prison Entrepreneur Program is something that I could offer some skills to. Prison Entrepreneurship Program really focuses on, just a little headline, they focus on the last, most often 2 to 3 years before men are released from prison, on business skills and character skills. And we get them ready for entry into the post-release world. It is a brotherhood. It has fraternity elements to it. I mean, the men tend to stick together. They support each other. There's a lot of business leaders and people with business backgrounds like me who get involved and provide mentoring for them. But we also teach just a lot of classes in prison as they create their business plans for what they want to do when they leave. And then out of prison, we also have classes on all the life skills that they need to have to be successful in the real world, be it that they've only been out for 2 or 3 years or even 20 years. So that's what the focus of it. The kind of headline that really got me excited about them is recidivism, which is this term that means what percentage of people when they're released end up back in prison. And that number is very high nationwide.
Right.
After 3 years, it can be up to 50%. But in our program, it's 7. So if our graduates would go through instead of 50, it's 7. And if they stick with us and hang with the brotherhood and go to the classes afterwards, then it's only 2. So our guys don't go back to prison. Our guys go into the business world, and we've had several who have launched $1 million a year businesses coming out. So it is an exciting program. We're working with exciting people, and honestly, I never get tired of it. I mean, whatever I put into it, I feel like the guys give me 3 or 4 times back whatever effort I put into it.
Right.
They're extremely appreciative in a way that I would have never guessed. They're happy for any time you spend with them. And amazingly, they kind of keep my brain young because they are constantly hitting me with thoughts that I had never thought about. And they keep me on my toes You cannot, they'll barrage you with questions and thoughts that you just never had.
Right.
So, and it's it's very exciting. It's right now only in the state of Texas, and we'd love to expand it elsewhere. So my hope is that I do this for the, next 20 years, Lord willing, as long as my energy and health and, stay up, because it takes a lot of energy. I mean, if you're going to hang with the guys, they got a lot of energy, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta make sure you give back as much energy as they're giving you.
Wow, that is so cool. And that's why I had the opportunity of meeting you through PEP, volunteering. And
you're one of our faculty now. You teach our 7 habits classes. Yeah.
Such an honor. Absolutely.
All-time record scores we got from class feedback on that one.
Truly honored. Now, what blew me away the first time I went to PEP and we actually go into prison as a volunteer, you don't know what to expect. And I was just blown away by the energy level, the level of respect that they have, being so appreciative and just having so much fun. Yeah. Things you don't think about in prison. And then also they do the pitch contest. So it's kind of like the Shark Tank style, and their business ideas were amazing. I was just like, wow. They have very, very amazingly good ideas. And for markets that, as a marketing guy, I don't know anything about that market. But, they're sitting there looking at me saying, Mr. CMO, I'm expecting you to say something really smart. Right.
And the pressure on me to deliver them something meaningful, it keeps you on your toes. And I'm not joking when I'm saying, you're somebody who's left corporate America. It keeps your brain very fluid.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to, I'm going from talking about a guy who's got a barber product to a guy who's doing, high-end shoe restoration.
Wow.
To somebody who's, they're just all different kinds of product ideas, and you got to jump from thing to thing. So it is astounding the skills that these guys have.
That's so cool. And you mentioned another component other than the business skills, the character skills and the life skills. Tell us about the importance of that. That was actually the biggest surprise for me. I knew the business skills would be pretty sharp, and I'd seen some tapes. I was surprised that by the time we start working with them, they've been through the character phase already. And other than the fact that they're wearing all white, you wouldn't know that they're incarcerated. Right.
Great handshakes, great eye contact. Recall that I mentioned that I taught algebra in the prison system, guys getting their GED. So I was familiar with being in the prison. That didn't intimidate me at all. But the men that we had were at the very beginning, and their self-confidence had been shattered for the most part.
Right.
And we were trying to pick them up academically. It was just a very different population. These guys have already been picked up for the most part. And although, we're still there to build their self-esteem, they already understand that they're on the right road, and they have confidence of what they can do. They've already gone through their classes on Toastmasters, so they're often very good speakers, usually better than us, and good presenters. And like I said, other than what they're wearing, you wouldn't know that there's somebody who's incarcerated.
Yeah, I totally agree. Some of the most respectful guys I've met. Like, wow, this is not right. It's not what I expected.
No, it's not right. They challenge you, and and that's why I think anybody who has the time, who can come out to help, you're going to get way more back than you're going to give in.
Absolutely. And it's some, as far as those character skills and life skills, I wish that was something that was taught more in schools. And I think it would have a huge impact. And something I'm focusing on the volunteer side, and also my business. And just teaching those character and life skills is so important, just as important as learning algebra and English and all of those.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Probably more important, because if you got the right life skills, you can always pick that up later.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. Definitely. So I know PEP has a big event coming up in the month of November. Are you involved with that?
Yes. Yeah. So not probably as much as you are, because you got a big role. November 20th.
I'm excited.
Yeah, November 20th. And my role is to coach the presenters, which is intimidating to no end. You not understand.
Stakes are high.
Yeah, stakes are high. So they're coming. This is a new kind of service that PEP is offering, which is, after the men have been out and already have started their business, it is an opportunity for them to come back for very low interest loans. today, you go out into the capital market as a past offender. You're probably going to get a pretty high interest rate loan for your business. But through PEP, we're starting a process where we can give you something that is really very competitive. Low single digits loan to expand your business that's already been successful. So we are starting that process on November 20th with kind of our first 3. And my job is to help them with their 5-minute pitch and then help them prepare for the questions that they may get from the audience, which you're going to kind of moderate.
Right.
And so hopefully the guys are ready and they can show us the real talent that I know it's there. 'Cause it's a pretty intimidating group. There are going to be a couple hundred business leaders, and it's at the Bush Center.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that
it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. It could really, honestly, it couldn't be bigger. And these guys, this is a big stage. And so, I'm going to be praying the whole time, and I will be every bit as nervous as they are.
Well, they're in good hands, and it's actually it's on my birthday, so I can't think of a better way to spend my birthday.
Yeah. So I'm counting on you to be kind and supportive to them as the questions get asked, and hopefully we're gonna prepare them for the right questions. I have done a lot of this, talking to investors, the stock market, about certain initiatives we have, and but it's always a guess on what questions you're going to get asked, and are you really prepared to answer it?
Right. Yeah, always.
Right.
Well, that's great. So transitioning to this podcast is about mentorship. Mm-hmm. What roles have mentors played in your life?
I probably should have had more, but I can really point to one. So remember, I talked a little bit about high school. I was a little bit of a listless teenager.
Right.
I didn't think I was at the time. So this is more in hindsight. I know that I was. But at the time, I thought I was okay. Honestly, I wasn't flunking anything in class. I thought a D was bad, but certainly a C wasn't.
Right.
So the concept, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I assumed, I guess, I would go to college, although I hadn't thought anything about it. So my youth pastor in my church was a guy that he played football for Central Michigan. So, he had some credibility to him.
Okay.
And he was our youth pastor at church, and I was on the janitorial staff. That's how I made jean money, so I could afford, Levi's jeans as opposed to wearing
those Levi's.
Right. To me, Levi's was like all about, if I got a Levi's jeans, then I won't get teased, because if not, I'm wearing all the JCPenney stuff. And at that time, you get teased. I think JCPenney said look their clothes now, but at the time it was that. So I worked in the janitorial staff, and he'd come out, and while I was working in the gym, kind of cleaning the gym floor, and he'd shoot baskets with me and just talk to me about stuff. And he was just a great guy. He didn't try to instruct me. He just tried to talk about things and artfully bring them up. And so he was my mentor for 2 years. And he was the one that actually recommended the school in Tennessee that he thought would be a good fit for me, because I think he knew me well. And he took me down actually for my school visit for their camp, kind of to kind of see the school. And he said, I really think you're going to fit in well here. And he was just absolutely right on it. There was a few other schools there too. He goes, no, not that school. This school's rules are way too strict. And this fits you. Wow. When I came back, at the University of Michigan, he had gone on, he was now head pastor at a church in Georgia. And I remember one time waking up when I was 30 years old, and just it hit me to said, I think God told me, you need to write this guy a letter, which, this is like pen and paper writing, which I never do, ever.
You need a stamp and everything.
it was the clearest almost I've ever heard God's voice, and said, write him a letter. So I wrote him 2-3 page letter, just telling him everything he meant to me. And, and I, of course, I heard later through my father, because it kind of, he's a pastor as well, about how much that meant to him. And I suppose it hit him at a time when he was particularly searching or needing himself and wanted to know his impact on people's lives. But I owe an awful lot to that guy. And it wasn't because he sat around and just talked at me and told me everything that I need to do and do right, or told me I was, you could do better than you're doing. It's because he kind of came alongside me, and he accepted me, and he instructed lovingly at times when he felt that I needed just a little encouragement, but he always did it in a very soft, supportive way and not in an overwhelming way. So,
Wow.
his name was David Rowland.
Yeah, so, that sounds like an awesome mentor, and just shows just the impact that mentors can have on mentees, and just it's an exchange.
And he wasn't afraid to have fun. Like he'd joke around and tell things in college that had happened and just joke and stuff. And he was just he'd be serious and then he'd be a kidder. And as a teenage boy, you like that. He was real. He was authentic.
Right. And for you mentors out there, I hope you're taking notes. That's some good characteristics of a mentor. And I think no matter what your age, you can mentor someone.
Yep.
Yeah, it has an impact.
Yeah.
Well, Carl, you've given us a lot of great advice and guidance, just practical things that the listeners can do, and just learned a lot from your journey. What will be some of your parting words of advice for the listeners?
Wow, parting words of advice. I think I've given them, and I think the one thing that I tell, people, younger people, a lot of times, and that I've done in my own life, and I'm glad, and I think I'm going to continue to do this even in the remaining years that I have here, which is, I'm always thinking about how do I change up things and how do I reinvent myself. So I mentioned the fact of kind of getting off to life, a little bit of a slow start, but I think because I always had the concept that you really don't fail till you quit trying. I just said it's never too late, and
right.
and that is true as well. Even when you get, into my age and now in my late 50s.
Still young.
I'm still thinking, okay, I'm about ready to turn 60 years old. And what am I going to do during my 60s? How am I going to change it up? And so often that leads you to walk away from the things that you're really good at and do something that you're really not good at. And one of the things getting in with PEP as director of education, I am not a professional educator. I'm a marketing guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm having to learn what being an educator means and how you try to create good student outcomes and all the things that educators matter. But it's because I purposely didn't want to do the marketing end of PEP. I wanted to do something different. My advice would be, feel free to change it up and do something different that you're not doing at, so you can continue to grow. Because life is about growing. It isn't about arriving. It's about growing.
I love that advice, because once you get comfortable, it's like then you get complacent, and it's kind of all downhill from there.
Yeah, downhill. You become locked into your thinking, and your brain loses its fluidity that you have when you're young and able to kind of learn things. So yeah, keep things changing.
Yep. And that's something I can relate to, because most of my career has been cybersecurity. And just the past year is when I decided, hey, I want to take public speaking serious, hosted the podcast, and started doing teaching classes and keynote speeches, things like that. It was certainly outside of my comfort zone, because prior to that, I feared public speaking. But now I've learned to love it. You just never know once you try something different.
That's right. As you know, at PEP, your listeners don't know, but before we come up and speak, we have to dance down the aisle.
Oh yeah,
and they'll play any song for you, and you have to know somebody. Dancing
so cool
down the aisle. And that's not something I've been good at, but I had to learn how to at least fake it. Make it. So.
Yes, that'll loosen your nerves up by the time you get up there.
For sure.
Yeah, I love that activity.
That's
well,
great.
Carl, we really appreciate you spending some time with us. I'm sure
you,
the listeners have learned a lot. And what would be the best way to contact you if listeners wanted to reach out?
If you've got any questions, probably email me is probably always the best way. It's my email is bracycarl@gmail.com. So BRACYCARL, one word, @gmail.com.
Cool.
Yeah, maybe if you've got a question or anything, put in the subject matter of the podcast. So I know, because I get a lot of emails from my mentees through PEP, and so I want to make sure who the audience I'm talking to.
Cool. Well, Thanks a lot, Carl, and looking forward to seeing you on the November 20th. It's going to be an awesome event.
All right. Thanks, man. See you.
All right. That was an incredible interview with Carl Bracy. He just shares so much valuable knowledge with us. Can't thank him enough. Be sure to reach out to Carl. He's very passionate about mentorship. So if you have questions about career, life, marketing, volunteering, whatever. Carl is there to help you. So take advantage of that. And I'll be back next week with another great guest mentor.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Mentor Select podcast, helping you identify and follow your passions. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit mentorselect.com and Mentor Select on social media. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review. We'll catch you next time.